Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a pretty incredible reality. We're looking at 250 years of dense, multifaceted Wisconsin history, and we're going to see how it's all fundamentally dictated by one single thing: geography.
So, what really drives history? Well, when you look at the upper Mississippi Valley, you aren't just looking at a pretty view. You're actually looking at a 12,000-year-old engine of history. It's fascinating because the people, the industries, and the conflicts here, they've all constantly shifted, but the physical map, it's remained exactly the same.
Take a look at this natural crossroads right in La Crosse. This wasn't just nice scenery, it was an absolute geographic jackpot. I mean, the convergence of the Mississippi, the Black, and the La Crosse rivers right beneath those towering bluffs of the Driftless area. It created this rare expanse of flat, buildable prairie right next to a massive water network. It basically stacked the deck for human opportunity. To prove that geography really is destiny here, we're going to trace this 250-year history through four distinct parts. First, the river's changing identity. Second, furs, timber, and trains. Third, 2 centuries of conflict. And finally, how the map remains constant. All right, let's jump right into part 1. The river's changing identity, transforming from an ancient highway to an engineered machine. You know, long before the United States even existed, this river functioned as this vast, indigenous-managed interstate highway. And as we move through the centuries, you can see how it evolved into a commercial fur trade artery. By the 1930s, the U.S. government actually went in and engineered the river into a full-blown commercial machine, using massive projects like Lock and Dam Number 7. And today is transforming yet again, this time into a protected ecological flyway and recreational resource. And that early historical footprint is profound. Indigenous nations connected to the upper Mississippi, like the Ho-Chunk, the Dakota, Ojibwe, Meskwaki, Sauk, and Miami, maintained deep, sustainable ties to this exact landscape. Actually, it was their highly sophisticated agricultural and trade networks, combined with their deep expertise in regional ecology and navigation, that laid the crucial groundwork for later European and American settlement.
So when you look at this historical arc, it's pretty clear. The river's identity adapts perfectly to the era. It goes from a cultural and trade highway to an industrial frontier commerce route to modern engineered and ecological infrastructure. The river itself never moved an inch, right? Human ambition just kept redefining its purpose. It was and is the defining force of the region.
Moving right along to part 2, furs, timber, and trains. Let's look at the economic evolution of this geographic hub.
If you really want to understand history, follow the money. Doing that reveals how this exact same river convergence enabled completely different massive economic booms. Just look at the stark contrast. The native trade economy moved things like copper, shells, and furs over thousands of miles via canoe. Now compare that to today's modern economy, which runs on global trade networks, advanced rail logistics, a massive local train company, and healthcare. The technology changed drastically, obviously, but the geographic advantage, that stayed exactly the same. The first major pivot into commercial American industry happened right here, in 1841. That's when a guy named Nathan Myrick established a trading post at Prairie La Crosse, and honestly, the geography just made perfect economic sense. He capitalized on those existing native networks and the incredibly easy river access, completely turning the region into a bustling commercial frontier that moved beaver, otter, and mink pelts southward towards St. Louis. And right on the heels of the fur trade, this specific geography perfectly enabled an explosive lumber boom. The whole process was like a massive geographic machine. First, lumberjacks cut towering white pines up in the northern Wisconsin forests. Then they floated literally millions of logs down the Black River during the spring melts. Those logs were then processed right in the Crosse sawmills, turning the city into a noisy, smoke-filled industrial powerhouse. Finally, they shipped that finished lumber nationwide via steamboat and rail to literally build expanding American cities. Then, when the railroads finally arrived in the 1850s, they didn't replace the river at all. They actually amplified it. The rail lines linked east-west land traffic directly with that north-south steamboat traffic. This specific intersection permanently cemented La Crosse as a heavy manufacturing and transportation hub. In fact, the wealth generated from this transportation crossroads built the banks, the downtown buildings, and those historic mansions you can still see today. Okay, let's zoom out a bit for part 3, 2 centuries of conflict. We're exploring Wisconsin's strategic geography and its military legacy.
The military history of this region is deeply, deeply tied to its geography and its shifting populations. Take the 1832 Black Hawk War. Driven by disputes over treaties, it tragically resulted in the displacement of native populations. But that historical sequence subsequently opened the territory for a massive influx of German and Scandinavian immigrants. And generations later, the descendants of those very immigrant populations would mobilize from Wisconsin to fight in massive global conflicts. What's really staggering here is the sheer scale of that mobilization. Even as a young state, Wisconsin sent an incredible 91,000 soldiers to fight for the Union cause during the Civil War. That number even included the legendary Iron Brigade, a unit that earned a fierce reputation for discipline and absolute toughness at major battles like Antietam and Gettysburg.
Now, looking between the world wars, the cultural and industrial landscape shifted pretty dramatically. During World War I, intense suspicion and anti-German sentiment deeply affected Wisconsin's massive German-American communities. Yet, flash forward to World War II, and the state had transformed into an absolute Allied manufacturing powerhouse. Companies like Harley-Davidson, Allis-Chalmers, and Oshkosh Truck became absolutely vital cogs in the victory. They were churning out so much material, they even utilized German POWs for farm labor just to meet wartime demand.
As we move into the Cold War era, Wisconsin really mirrored the deep political divisions that were fracturing the rest of the nation. During the Vietnam War, college campuses across the state became centers for intense anti-war protest. And this culminated tragically in August 1970, when anti-war activists bombed Sterling Hall at UW-Madison, a pretty stark, devastating symbol of the era's soaring tensions.
Today, the state's military footprint remains incredibly robust, seamlessly blending those heavy industrial manufacturing roots with massive modern logistics. You've got Fort McCoy serving as a huge national hub for training, mobilization, and refugee processing. Meanwhile, companies like Oshkosh Defense are globally recognized for manufacturing MRAPs and tactical trucks, all of which supports a National Guard that frequently deploys worldwide on counterterrorism and global operations. So, looking at this overview, you can see how Wisconsin repeatedly mirrored broader American conflicts over the centuries. It evolved from a contested Native and British frontier region during the Revolutionary era into a major Union troop contributor, then an industrial powerhouse, and finally, an undisputed modern defense production center. Through it all, the state's strategic location was the one vital constant. Let's tie this all together in our final section, Part 4. The map remains constant, proving how geography creates opportunity. The crucial takeaway here is that over 250 years, the tools evolved dramatically. We went from canoes moving furs to steamboats and railroads moving massive white pine logs, all the way to modern factories producing MRAPs. The populations changed, and the economy's completely transformed, but the map itself, those connecting rivers and bluff corridors, they never stopped mattering. They were always the unbreakable engine of opportunity. As we look to the future, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. The river has been a highway, a factory, and a battleground. But today, we're facing rising concerns over climate change, extreme flooding, and balancing that vital modern commerce with the urgent need for ecological conservation. The geography will absolutely dictate our future, just as it dictated our past. So how will this ancient river shape our next 250 years? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you a whole new way to look at the map.